I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. We see in the construction of this great hall that was more than a promise. It was a profound...
Well, it finally happened. After years of drama, family feuds, and Netflix tell-alls, King Charles did what everyone said he was too soft to ever do. He stripped Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of every single royal title they had left. No more Duke and Duchess of Sussex, no more His Royal Highness or Her Royal Highness, just Harry and Meghan, regular people, done. And here's the wild part. Buckingham Palace didn't even make a big announcement about it. No press conference, no warning, nothing. They just quietly updated the royal website and erased every trace of those titles, like they never existed. It was cold, quiet, and absolute. For 3 years, Harry and Meghan had been dancing between two worlds, half royal, half celebrity. But the crown just made it official. You can't serve California and the palace at the same time. And trust me, the timing, not random at all.
Meghan Markle is the flea in the ointment who continues to ruin the increasingly...
But what actually pushed Charles to finally do it? And why was William the one pulling the strings behind the scenes? Hit that subscribe button and smash the like because this story gets way messier than you think. Let's get into it. So what finally pushed Charles to cut the cord? Here's where it gets messy. Word from the palace is that Meghan used her Duchess title in new business filings. Yeah, you heard that right. Even after she'd promised the late Queen Elizabeth she'd never mix royalty with money, she went ahead and did it anyway. And that was all it took. Now get this, these weren't just casual mentions either. We're talking business paperwork, the whole 9 yards. The Duchess title was front and center, being used to boost her business deals. And when that news reached the palace walls, you can imagine how well that went over. People who work there said the atmosphere completely shifted. What had been frustration for years suddenly became something else entirely, something colder. To the palace, it looked like a slap in the face. To William, absolute humiliation.
Prince William is reportedly formulating a plan to finally strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their HRH titles.
People close to the situation claim he was losing it, saying Meghan turned the crown into a brand. He'd been watching this play out for months, seeing the royal name attached to deals and projects, and every single time it chipped away at the institution he's supposed to inherit one day. The future king wasn't just annoyed anymore, he was done. And listen, this wasn't just about hurt feelings or family drama, this was about power and what the monarchy even means anymore. Because Charles wasn't just deciding as a father in that moment, he was deciding as a king. The weight of that crown means something, and if he didn't draw a line somewhere, the whole thing would keep unraveling. If he didn't act first, things would spiral even further out of control. The last thing he wanted was the family becoming a laughingstock while everyone debated their next move on social media and morning talk shows. So he acted swiftly, quietly. Some people close to him say the king didn't do this out of anger.
I think that they're very scared every time that they do meet what will get aired to the public, and I think that
he did it out of survival. The monarchy couldn't afford another mess, not with everything else already hanging by a thread, not with the world watching every single move they made, waiting for the next scandal to drop. For Charles, this wasn't some emotional reaction or a moment of weakness. It was chess, not checkers. Strategic, calculated, deliberate. And guess who was moving the pieces right behind him? That's right, Prince William. Because while Charles might have signed the papers, make no mistake, this was William's move. For months, the future king had been quietly pushing his father to take control. He was tired of watching the monarchy turn into a soap opera. Every podcast jab, every Netflix confession, every headline that dropped had chipped away at royal credibility. And William, he was watching it all crumble, piece by piece, interview by interview. Here's the thing. William's not the type to blow up publicly. He's calculated, measured, careful with his words.
Prince William has finally snapped. Enough is enough. He has told
But behind palace doors, people say he was seething, Each time another story came out, each time the Sussex name appeared in entertainment news instead of actual royal duties, it ate at him. This wasn't how royalty was supposed to work. This wasn't what his grandmother had built, and he wasn't about to let it continue on his watch. Palace insiders say William told his father during one heated conversation, "You can't be king and be afraid of upsetting people who already left the family," and that was it. The heir had spoken. Think about that for a second. The son telling the father it's time to act like a king. That's not just advice, that's a power shift happening in real time. That's the next generation stepping up and saying enough is enough. Those close to the palace claim William saw Harry and Meghan as a liability, not a loss. And that's a cold way to look at your own brother, but that's where his head was at. To him, protecting the crown meant cutting off anyone who used royal prestige
The ladder, only to fall straight back to the bottom again for a dedicated social mountaineer like Meg.
while trashing the institution that gave it to them in the first place. You can't have it both ways. You can't bash the family on streaming platforms and then use their titles to sell your lifestyle brand. He wasn't being cruel about it. He was being cold, strategic, focused, business, not personal. This was William's first real public flex of authority, and behind closed doors, it sent shockwaves through the royal staff. The younger generation wasn't waiting around anymore. The future king was already making moves, already reshaping how things would work when his time came. People who work at the palace started realizing something major was changing. The old guard, the ones who'd been there for decades, they'd never seen anything quite like this. A prince essentially directing his father, the king, on how to handle family matters. The message couldn't have been clearer. The era of royal exceptions is over. No more tiptoeing around uncomfortable decisions.
And let's not forget that even in her new Netflix show with Love Meghan, she's credited as Meghan, Duchess of...
No more letting things slide because it's family. William wanted discipline, structure, boundaries, hard lines that wouldn't get crossed. And as the dust settled, Buckingham Palace finally started looking like it had a backbone again. The king had drawn the line. The heir had sharpened it. Staff members walked the halls with a different energy, like they were finally working for an institution that knew what it stood for. And over in Montecito, Harry and Meghan were about to find out what happens when the crown decides it's done playing nice. Behind the palace gates, King Charles wasn't celebrating his victory. He was torn apart by it. For weeks before the decision, he'd wrestled with it privately, losing sleep, pacing the halls, replaying conversations in his head. As a father, he still saw his youngest son, the little boy who once followed him through the gardens at Highgrove, not the man now living under California sunshine. He remembered Harry's laugh, the way he'd light up around people.
His father for about 20 months now. But one of the big headlines that we're seeing today is that William thinks this idea of a...
The way he'd throw himself into causes he believed in. Those memories didn't just disappear because things got messy. But as a king, he saw something else entirely. He saw a ticking threat to the monarchy's image. He saw the headlines piling up, the interviews getting more personal, the family stories being sold to the highest bidder. And every single one of those stories made the crown look weaker, more outdated, more irrelevant. The weight of both realities was crushing him. Those close to the palace say Charles's health and stress levels were getting worse by the day. He wasn't sleeping right, wasn't eating properly. People who'd worked with him for years noticed the change. He looked older, more tired, more worn down than they'd ever seen him. And the thing that haunted him most, he dreaded being remembered as the king who let love cloud duty, the king who was too soft to make the hard calls when they mattered most. One insider recalled the moment the paperwork landed on his desk.
Meghan Markle is quickly becoming the new Sarah Ferguson, an ex-royal obsessed with staying in the limelight.
It sat there for what felt like forever. The silence was heavy, the air cold. Everyone in the room knew what this meant. Charles stared at those documents like they were a death sentence, and in a way, maybe they were. A death sentence for the relationship he'd always hoped he could repair with his son. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the pen, and then finally said, "He's He's my son, but I'm the king. And with one signature, he made the hardest decision of his reign. But listen, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoring balance to something that had been tilted for way too long. For years, the monarchy had been seen as weak, reactive, constantly cleaning up after the Sussex PR storms. Every time Harry and Meghan made headlines, the palace was scrambling to respond, to control the narrative, to minimize the damage. It was exhausting, and worse, it made them look powerless. This was Charles's way of reasserting control.
Meghan and Harry are back in the UK. Their first stop was in Manchester, where the Duchess
of reminding everyone that the crown isn't sentimental. It's an institution. It has rules, expectations, standards, and if you can't meet those standards, then you don't get to keep the privileges that come with them. Simple as that. He needed the world to see that the monarchy could still make tough decisions, could still draw lines in the sand, could still stand for something beyond just family drama. Still, those closest to him say he hasn't been the same since. The man who signed those papers isn't the same man who wakes up in the palace every morning. There's a heaviness to him now, a sadness that wasn't there before. Because this wasn't just politics or royal protocol or institutional preservation. It was personal, deeply, painfully personal. And that's a weight that doesn't just go away with a signature. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in sunny Montecito, Meghan Markle was reportedly livid. Sources claimed that when she first heard the news, she thought it was a mistake.
The family reunion. Yep, the royal feud is apparently still on. They reportedly have no plans to see.
Like, surely the palace wouldn't actually go through with it. Surely someone would call and say it was just a clerical error or something. But then the official royal website confirmed it, and reality hit hard. The titles were gone. The Duchess was no more. She allegedly called the palace decision a targeted attack, a deliberate move to undermine everything she'd built. And here's what she expected to happen next: a massive wave of public support. She thought people would rally behind her, that Hollywood would come to her defense, that her celebrity friends would flood social media with statements of solidarity. But that backlash she was waiting for, it never came. Not from the US media, not from her celebrity friends, not from anyone. Even Hollywood, once her biggest fan base, went completely quiet. The silence was deafening. And that silence said more than any statement ever could. It said that people weren't willing to go to bat for this fight, that maybe, just maybe, the public was tired of the back and forth drama.
10 times he gets exactly the type of security he needs. But you're right, the list is ridiculous. Once Meghan treated as an
Suddenly, Meghan's entire brand looked shaky. Everything she'd built, from her lifestyle ventures to her media projects, had leaned heavily on her Duchess identity. That title opened doors, got meetings, secured deals. Without it, the whole thing started looking unstable. Every proposal, every contract, every marketing pitch had been wrapped in that royal mystique. And now, that mystique was gone. A Hollywood insider put it bluntly at the time. Her title was her brand. Without it, the shine fades fast. And she knew it. You could see it in how quickly her team went into crisis mode. Behind closed doors, it was chaos. Phone calls flying, publicists scrambling, consultants being called in, everyone trying to figure out how to rebrand Meghan Markle without the crown attached to her name. But the real sting wasn't even professional. It was personal. Because here's the thing, Meghan had promised Queen Elizabeth that she'd never use her royal status for profit. That was the deal, the understanding. The line she swore she wouldn't cross.
So that's why it's so confusing that now suddenly she wants to be known as Duchess of Sussex when she's not even in Sussex. She's not even.
And now that promise had come full circle, like karma coming back around. The palace hadn't forgotten, and apparently they'd been keeping track. Inside that Montecito mansion, walls that once echoed with ambition and big plans now carried something heavier: tension, frustration, the realization that the game had changed and they hadn't seen it coming. And while Meghan was fuming, trying to figure out her next move, Harry was dealing with something entirely different. If Meghan's reaction was fury, Harry's was heartbreak. Pure, crushing heartbreak. Sources say he took the news harder than anyone expected. For him, those titles weren't about money or fame or business deals. They were about identity. They were the last thread connecting him to the only world he'd ever known, the only world he'd been born into, raised in, shaped by. Without those titles, who was he even supposed to be? The moment he learned of his father's decision, Harry reportedly made a private call to Charles. And get this.
If you think about this young man, over his lifetime, he's done more good than bad.
He wasn't angry. He wasn't making demands. He was pleading. Like a son reaching out to his father one last time, hoping for some kind of mercy, some kind of understanding. He reminded his father of their family bond, of all the years they'd shared, of the memories that should have meant something. And then he brought up his mother, Diana. He reminded Charles of the promise that Diana's boys would always be protected, always be looked after, always have a place in the family no matter what. That was supposed to mean something, right? That was supposed to be sacred. Harry was basically begging his father to remember that they were more than just king and prince. They were father and son. But Charles didn't bend, not even a little. A palace insider claimed the king listened quietly, letting Harry get it all out, and then simply said, "You've made your choices, Harry. Now I must make mine." That was it. No shouting, no big dramatic argument, no back and forth, just that one cold final statement.
Is it a bad look for Meghan to still refer to herself as a royal?
Whoopi Goldberg.
And then the call ended. Just silence on both ends of the line. From that point on, Harry withdrew. Friends say he's been more distant, more subdued, like a light went out somewhere inside him. He goes through the motions of life in California, the events, the appearances, the family time, but his mind and his heart, they're still back in Windsor. They're still stuck in that moment when everything changed. People close to him notice the difference immediately. The Harry who used to be so animated, so passionate, so full of energy, he's gone quiet. He'll sit in rooms and just stare off into space. He'll be in the middle of conversations and you can tell he's not really there. His body's in Montecito, but his spirit's somewhere else entirely. Losing his royal identity wasn't just a career blow or a business setback. It was a spiritual exile. It was being cut off from everything that defined him for 30 plus years. And for the first time, even Meghan reportedly noticed the difference.
Prince Harry is back in London, just one day before the anniversary of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II's death.
The man who once fought so hard to build a new life away from the crown suddenly seemed completely lost without it. He wasn't Prince Harry anymore. He was just Harry, just a guy living in California with a famous wife and a complicated past. And somehow that title, or lack of one, felt heavier than all the ones he'd lost. Because when you strip away the prince, when you strip away the duke, what's left? That's the question Harry's been wrestling with ever since. And honestly, it doesn't seem like he's found an answer yet. But here's where it gets even messier. By stripping Harry and Meghan's titles, Charles didn't just clean up one situation. He wiped the slate clean for the entire monarchy. This move silenced years of criticism about the palace playing favorites, about double standards, about some royals getting away with things while others got dragged through the mud. For years, people had been pointing fingers, asking why certain family members could do whatever they wanted while others faced consequences.
Now here's where things get messy, because it's not just Harry and Meghan under Parliament's microscope anymore, it's their kids.
Why some scandals got swept under the rug while others became international headlines. It was inconsistent, messy, and frankly, it made the whole institution look weak. The public was losing respect for an institution that couldn't seem to enforce its own rules, but now there were no exceptions. Not for anyone. The message was crystal clear and brutally simple. Royal privilege isn't a lifetime membership card you get to keep no matter what. It's a responsibility. It comes with expectations, standards, duties. And if you can't meet those expectations, if you can't fulfill those duties, then you don't get to keep the privileges that come with them. Period. End of story. You're either in or you're out. There's no middle ground anymore. But here's who got caught in the crossfire: Archie and Lilibet, Harry and Meghan's kids. With their parents' titles gone, any chance of royal rank in their future went with it. These kids, who technically had royal blood running through their veins,
and in large part get ahead of this inevitable surge, This massive increase will mean we see more of the world's most beautiful
would never grow up with the titles, the status, the recognition that comes with being part of the Windsor family. They'd never be Prince Archie or Princess Lilibet. They'd just be Archie and Lilibet Mountbatten Windsor. Regular kids with an extraordinary family history they'd probably never fully be part of. Meghan allegedly told friends that Charles had robbed her children of their legacy, that he'd taken away what should have been theirs, their heritage, their connection to a family history that went back centuries. She saw it as punishing innocent kids for their parents' choices. And from her perspective, that's exactly what it was. Those kids didn't ask for any of this drama. They didn't choose to be born into this mess. They didn't pick their parents or decide to leave the royal family. So why should they pay the price? It's a fair question, honestly. But inside the palace, the view was completely different.
New calls for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to have their titles stripped, as well as
The perspective there was cold, calculated, and unapologetic. That legacy you're talking about, it isn't inherited. It isn't something you get just because of who your parents are or what bloodline you come from. It's earned. It's built through service, through dedication, through showing up and doing the work year after year, through ribbon cuttings and charity events and representing the crown at functions you don't even want to attend. That's what earns you the title, not DNA. Archie and Lilibet would grow up as Americans, not Windsors. They'd have normal childhoods in California, far away from the royal fishbowl, the constant scrutiny, the suffocating expectations that come with being born into that world. They'd go to regular schools, play with regular kids, live regular lives without cameras following them everywhere. They'd have play dates and birthday parties and school recitals without the press analyzing their every move. And perhaps, at least from the palace's point of view, that was exactly how it should be. Quiet, distant, and far from royal chaos.
With the King's communications chief, and that actually was caught.
To the monarchy, this wasn't cruelty. This wasn't some vindictive punishment meant to hurt innocent children or get revenge on their parents. It was cleanup. It was drawing boundaries and making sure everyone understood where the lines were. It was about protecting the institution from future complications, from having more people out there using royal connections while living completely separate lives on a different continent. Because think about it, what would have happened if Archie and Lilibet grew up with royal titles while living in America? They'd be half in, half out, just like their parents tried to be, using the titles when it benefited them, ignoring the responsibilities when it didn't, doing Netflix deals while being called prince and princess. That's exactly the situation the palace was trying to avoid. And we all saw how well that worked out with Harry and Meghan. The palace was making sure that cycle didn't repeat itself with the next generation. The institution was thinking long-term here.
Well. It finally happened. After years of royal drama, family feuds, and Netflix tell-all.
In 20 years, Archie and Lilibet could have been in the exact same position as their parents, caught between two worlds, trying to monetize their royal status while living completely normal lives in California. It would have been the same drama, the same headlines, the same mess all over again. By cutting it off now, the palace was preventing that future headache. Cold, maybe, but effective, absolutely. And so, just like that, the monarchy started looking like itself again. The royal website got updated, the paperwork got sealed, and the names Duke and Duchess of Sussex were erased like they'd never been there in the first place. No fanfare, no ceremony, just a quiet deletion that spoke volumes about where the palace's priorities were. The statement it sent was impossible to miss. Royal status isn't something you get to keep in your back pocket for whenever it's convenient. It's not a part-time gig. It's not something you can turn on and off depending on whether you feel like showing up that day. It requires commitment, dedication, and a willingness to put the institution before yourself, always.
We've seen Meghan continue to use her HRH despite being ordered not to do so by the late Queen Elizabeth II.
And if you can't do that, then you don't get the perks that come with it. For Charles, this was the line he'd been avoiding for years. He'd been patient, maybe too patient. He'd held back, hoping things would sort themselves out, hoping his son would come around, hoping the family could somehow find a middle ground that worked for everyone. But that middle ground never materialized. And eventually, he had to accept that it never would. would. Drawing this line wasn't easy for him. We already talked about how much it cost him personally, how it tore him up inside. But from an institutional standpoint, it was exactly what needed to happen. The monarchy had been bleeding credibility for years, looking weaker with every scandal, every tell-all interview, every headline that made them seem out of touch or hypocritical. This decision was about stopping that bleeding, about showing the world that the crown still had teeth. For William, this was validation, pure, simple validation that his vision for the monarchy's future was the right one.
Well, Her Royal Highness Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, is about to be stripped of her official title. With King Charles,
he'd been pushing for this kind of firm stance for months, arguing that the institution needed to prioritize strength and consistency over family sentiment. And now his father had finally listened. The heir apparent's influence was clear, his strategic thinking was paying off, and the palace was operating with a level of discipline it hadn't shown in years. People who work there noticed the shift immediately. The atmosphere changed. There was a sense of purpose again, a feeling that decisions were being made with conviction instead of just reacting to whatever crisis popped up next. Staff members who'd been frustrated by the constant drama, the endless back and forth, finally felt like they were working for an institution that knew what it stood for. The institution had chosen survival over sentiment, and honestly, that's probably what saved it. Because here's the thing about centuries-old monarchies: they don't survive by being soft.
For you in our hearts. He was also seen talking to his estranged brother, Prince William, at one point, but royal experts are now
They don't last for generations by prioritizing individual feelings over institutional stability. They endure because they're willing to make hard decisions when those decisions need to be made. This wasn't about being cruel to Harry and Meghan. It wasn't about punishing them or getting revenge or making them suffer. It was about the crown recognizing that it couldn't function with people halfway in and halfway out. It couldn't maintain credibility while some members used royal titles to build personal brands. It couldn't enforce standards if those standards only applied to some people some of the time. The monarchy had to choose what it wanted to be. Did it want to be a flexible, modern institution that bent to accommodate everyone's individual needs? Or did it want to be a traditional, disciplined institution with clear rules and consequences? Charles chose the latter. And in making that choice, he essentially reset the entire system. No more exceptions, no more special treatment, no more turning a blind eye to things that would have gotten other people in trouble.
Buckingham Palace has declined to comment on these claims so far, but this, of course, is the answer to the question that everyone has been asking.
From this point forward, everyone would play by the same rules. And if you couldn't play by those rules, you were out. Simple as that. The crown had spoken, the line had been drawn, and the monarchy moved forward without looking back. And just like that, we've come full circle. The royal website's updated, the paperwork's sealed, and the names Duke and Duchess of Sussex are gone like they were never there to begin with. It's almost surreal how quickly it all happened once the decision was made. Years of buildup, years of drama, and then just done, erased, over. For King Charles, this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at his son for leaving or punishing Meghan for speaking out. It was about restoration, about bringing order back to an institution that had been spinning out of control for too long, about proving that the monarchy could still function, could still enforce its own rules, could still command respect. He made the hardest choice a father could make, and whether people agree with it or not, he made it.
How will the King and Prince William act over the shocking new Prince Andrew revelations? Has Meghan Markle fallen out with yet another?
For what he believed was the right reason. For William, it was validation, complete and total validation. Everything he'd been arguing for, everything he'd been pushing his father to do, it all came to pass. The crown could act like a crown again. The monarchy could be firm, decisive, uncompromising. His vision for a tighter, more disciplined institution was now the reality. And going forward, there's no doubt who's really shaping the future of that family. And for Harry and Meghan, it was consequence, plain and simple, the final reminder that you can walk away from the palace, you can build a new life somewhere else, you can tell your story however you want to tell it. But you can't take the kingdom with you. You can't keep the titles, the prestige, the royal mystique while living on your own terms thousands of miles away. It doesn't work like that. It never did. There's something almost poetic about how it all played out.
From Westminster is shaking the palace walls like thunder in a teacup. The British Parliament, yes, the actual lawmakers are.
The father who'd spent years avoiding confrontation finally stood his ground when it mattered most. The son who rebelled and fought for freedom finally faced what that freedom actually cost him. And the daughter-in-law who built an entire empire on royal status learned what happens when the crown stops playing along with your plans. Because here's the truth that this whole situation exposed: the crown never forgets.